Good morning. Welcome to our webinar discussing the very important, very nascent, but potentially the most mainstream application satellite could tap over time. It's already happening today. Joined by Greg Pelton, Chief Technology Officer for Iridium, Mr. James Alderdice, Vice President for Asia at Link. Welcome, gentlemen. So as I mentioned in the Welcome. As I mentioned in the first statement, this is potentially the biggest opportunity, but it's not without challenges. So please take us through your company and what's your play in the satellite direct handheld space. Greg, would start with you, please.
Thank you. I appreciate being here. So Iridium is a global mobile satellite operator. We've been in business for decades. We have a constellation of 66 satellites worldwide, and a couple million customers connected into our network. These are many use cases across everything from consumers to defense, to shipping, to industrial. So we're very experienced in deploying these kinds of services, and have recently announced in a partnership with Qualcomm where we're going to connect Android-based smartphones to our network as well.
Excellent. James?
So I work for Link Global. Link is a new satellite operator working in the low Earth orbit environment, and we are launching a satellite direct to mobile service with our satellites acting as mobile base stations in space. And we were founded over 5 years ago. And we're just a few months away from launching a couple of months away from launching our initial commercial service with over 25 mobile operators globally.
Great, excellent. So we have Iridium, who's been in business since the late 1990s, solid track record. We've got James Alderdice from Link, new player. Good luck to both of you, to all of us in the industry. But Greg, satellite communications, again, going back to Iridium, it's been around for decades. You've been provisioning this. So what's new now with the satellite direct to device? What's again, it's the biggest opportunity to be seen. But from your point of view, having served this market for so long, what's new right now? Why the interest?
It has been a long and interesting journey to get here, because services like data and messaging and voice have been available on certain satellite networks for a long time, and there's a lot of different mission-specific use cases and devices out there. So people carry satellite phones and they carry satellite pagers and they have satellite communication devices on the back of vehicles. But I think what's changing is a couple things. One is just the recognition that, as we've all known for a long time, that the terrestrial cellular doesn't cover everywhere. Most of the world is not covered by terrestrial cellular, and it's too expensive to build out towers everywhere you want your customers to connect. But there's some really important use cases when people are out of coverage. And so I think the big change recently has been realizing that there's this opportunity and that the technology actually can work from a cell phone. And it's pretty straightforward. The amount of processing and the antennas and everything have evolved over time and gotten much more sophisticated. So now it is possible. So it's really just the question of how do you do that? And to do it, there's a bunch of impediments. So I'll just talk for a minute and then pass it back. One is spectrum. You have to have spectrum that's well suited for small mobile battery powered devices. And you have to have that spectrum everywhere you want to offer service. You have to fly satellites, which costs billions of dollars to put them in orbit and make them available. You have to have a service that's economical. You have to have a business case that pays off for the operators. And that's a really difficult combination, which I think we're seeing now is coming into being. And we feel lucky that we have all those conditions. We have an existing constellation of satellites. We have the right spectrum. We have the right service offering, and it's just a matter of putting the right partners together. The business case is already proven because we have millions of customers.
Right, and this is scale. I mean, for satellite, millions of customers, yes, but mobile users, we're talking billions. Okay.
Yeah.
Please go ahead, Greg, if you want to.
I was going to say we are, but I think an important thing to remember is that satellite service is unlikely to be the main service for cell phones. People are still going to primarily go to terrestrial carriers are primarily going to offer terrestrial service because it's just more economical. You've got the coverage, you got the density of population. It's for all those use cases outside of those core areas where you've got the towers that you want to focus satellite. And that means you don't have to solve the 5 billion people all the time problem. You have to solve the 5 billion people occasionally problem and a few people all the time.
Okay. So James, I suppose you agree with that, and I see you're nodding your head during Greg's answers. So the occasional person going out of coverage, how big is that? Is the entire addressable market all of those mobile users, or is it just partial? Your thoughts, James?
Yeah. So look, we about 3 years ago, we undertook some market research in a number of country markets to really try to sort of pin down how much experience mobile users are having out of coverage. And we found, for example, in a market like Australia, nearly half of people reported having an out of coverage mobile experience within the previous 12 months under a scenario where they couldn't easily get back under coverage. And then we said, well, what are you doing when this is happening? And a significant portion said they were either bushwalking, they were at a friend's property, they were camping, and a number of other activities. And so it for us, it just set another validation point of how big the market opportunity is. And then you can also look at the geographical basis. So, I mean, I think we all know that sort of 90% of the globe doesn't have any mobile coverage. And then when you break it down to certain countries, I mean, you've got 2/3 of Australia with no mobile coverage. You've got operators telling me in the Philippines that at least 3 years ago, over 50% of the Philippines had no mobile coverage on a geographic basis. And at the same time, in the Philippines, you've got half the population living in rural areas. So, there is a very, very significant opportunity to address this mobile disconnectivity problem, or this experience of lack of mobile coverage. And of course, it's obviously based on an economic return, right? Mobile operators don't get an economic return from low population density areas, or it's too difficult to put the connectivity in areas such as the open sea. And so we see this as a incredibly significant opportunity, and the market research that we've done appears to validate that.
Great. Okay. Completely agree. Your thoughts in the Philippines. Before the recording, we talked about the Philippines a bit, and there's hundreds and thousands of islands. Indonesia the same way, and coverage isn't there. But the current play of satellite direct-to-device right now seems to be consumer service. Is this going to be the service, or are there other use cases that would enlarge the market? Greg, what's your thought on that?
Yeah, I think there's other use cases, but the primary underserved use case right now is consumers, because what we've typically seen is that you have specialized devices that are designed for different businesses, different workflows, different applications, and so those are well suited. If you're a lineman climbing up a power pole, a regular touchscreen isn't going to work in your gloves when you're trying to keep yourself from being electrocuted. So you need a well-designed phone or device for that situation. Or if you're putting something on the back of a ship, you need something it can withstand salt water and sit out in the sun all day. And so I think that those use cases that are specialized and need devices, IoT devices sitting in the middle of the jungle, those are well served by the kinds of products that are being deployed today, and those users are well served. It's the consumers who occasionally need connectivity, don't want to pay for and carry an existing separate device. I mean, you can buy devices like Garmin provides using our network, which is great for hiking and camping and off-road. But if you're just occasionally driving through a forest on your way to your relative's house, you don't necessarily want a dedicated device for just that. So this consumer market, the occasional use, the people that are out of touch occasionally, I think that is the new market that's really being enabled right now. And it's going to be interesting to see. We talked about the business case and how you monetize this. How big is that user community and how much are they willing to pay? That's a big unknown right now. Which is why, from an investment perspective, if you have to at risk sort of acquire all the assets and deploy all the assets and build out the business and then monetize that, there's a lot of risk around that. And I think it'll be years, it'll be 2030 before we know how big this market really is. So that's a big upfront investment to see a payoff in that time frame. If you've already made the investment, you're just adding users to your existing installed base, it's a lot easier step to take. So I think that's where we're going to see a lot of interesting things shake out in the next few years, is on the business case side of this.
Great. All right. James, do you agree with that? And talk a bit more about the business case for consumers and others.
Yeah, we obviously have a slightly different perspective. We would believe that the business case would become incredibly clear within the next 18 months or even 24 months. And that's because, for example, our service is a roaming service. So it's fundamentally a plug-in for mobile operators to add to their network. And so when the phones of their subscribers are out of coverage, the phones will connect to our satellite service overhead, as a native 3GPP standard connectivity. We will launch this service as an intermittent periodic messaging service. I mean, it won't be all things to all people, but when you're very remote, and anyone in the satellite communications industry understands that, when you're beyond areas of connectivity, you appreciate any kind of connectivity. And so this will be very significant for people who are living outside of mobile connectivity or spending time outside mobile connectivity. Those locations from April this year will start to have connectivity under the Link network, as we build and roll out the network with relatively non-costly satellites that we build ourselves and that we've been building for the last couple of years. So that's where we sort of see it as how partly and how it's going to play out in the next in the immediate time frame.
Great. All right. So I think we're all in agreement. It's a big market. We haven't really seen the potential, but you can't go it alone. At least right now, we're seeing that partnerships are being formed. MNOs are going to be a big part of the equation. And I think on their side, they're beginning to try to figure out what's the play. So from the satellite industry, what's our pitch? What do we give to the MNOs? So that, one, we are enabled in providing the service, and two, it's easy for them to sort of sell that service to their end users. Greg?
It has to be easy, and it can involve a huge upfront investment because it's a very speculative business case at this point for the MNOs. So the more it fits into their existing operations and network, and the easier and lower cost it is to adopt, and the more the cost scales with the revenue, the better off they are. And so I think if you look at the approach that we've taken, where new phones will have this capability in it, and the MNO doesn't really need to do anything else. Once the phones are in their customers' hands, they can make the service available and they can generate revenue from that. And that's sort of the easiest path you can take to get something deployed in the market. It's just like saying, well, if I've got SMS on my phones and that's part of my service, now I can have satellite messaging on my phones as well. And that's just another thing I can monetize with my customer base and turn it off or on as I will. And my costs are scalable with when it's turned off and on. So I think the whole notion of not having an upfront investment, having a service that's already proven, it's operating at multiple nines of reliability and sort of meets the service provider mindset about how you deploy services and how they have to be supported, that goes a long way to lowering the barriers. And then the fact that it's deployed in the chips means you're not hostage to one phone vendor. You can put lots of different phones in your network and you can deploy the same service across all those phones, which again lowers the risk and lowers the threshold of pain for the service providers. So to me, that's how you get deployed quick, is by removing all those impediments.
Okay. You mentioned that the handsets are already there. So Apple is already in, and we can expect like the others, like especially Samsung should be entering soon, right? But they announced that they won't yet. But over time, I guess we all expect that this will be an accessible market with all the major handset players participating. Is that your thinking?
I think it will be. We've focused on Apple has a great ecosystem, and it's vertically integrated, and so they've got a solution there. We focused on a more horizontal ecosystem by going with Qualcomm and going with Android, because that's a huge amount of the phones that are out there. And so as more of those chips get deployed in more handsets, we're going to see more and more devices being built that way, and more will be able to take advantage of the service. So we just announced at CES a few weeks back, and we've waited to make sure everything was complete before we did that. But we'll see, and we've Qualcomm said in the second half of this year we'll see phones coming out that support this service.
Excellent. Okay, James, what's your pitch to MNOs and your thoughts on the equipment and handsets?
Yeah, so look, our mission is to connect, to have a network that all 7 billion handsets that are in the market today can connect to, and so that's inherent in our network. So when we go to an MNO, the baseline is that any of your subscribers, without any change, with the same SIM that they have today, with the same handset, can connect to our network, and so that obviously is a seamless, frictionless opportunity for the operators to say, well, let's use the link to extend our network, and we do that without imposing any costs on the operator. They don't need any infrastructure on the ground. It's very straightforward. They can set the price to their subscriber. They can design the access plan. So it's very flexible, very easy for the operator, and this is why we've got over 25 operators already committed to launching our service in the coming months.
Oh, excellent! Congratulations for that. 25 operators.
Yeah, I think it's 26 or 27 now. The number keeps changing. But
okay, great. That's very good. Okay, so there seems to be different strategies, especially looking at spectrum. Some use the MNO spectrum, some use the MSS spectrum. So first, James, what's the advantage of using MNO spectrum, and how do you mitigate regulatory and interference risks?
Well, so a mobile operator will pay. Most operators have to pay for spectrum in their countries, and they'll pay it for the entire geography of that country. But yet, in 99% of countries, they're unable to deploy that spectrum across the full geography due to the reasons I mentioned before. So we can help. We do help operators monetize their spectrum by allowing them to utilize it with our satellite network to fill in those geographic areas where there's no service, and we can design that coverage, whether it's just a particular couple of areas they want to service, or they just want to have an overlay across their network to fill in any gaps that are there.
And interference issues that can be handled by both.
Yeah, interference is a really minor factor. I mean, we already have the commercial approval from the FTC to launch our service globally. So, in providing that approval, FCC had a very close look at our extensive analysis that showed how interference is managed.
Okay, great. All right, Greg, you're on the other side. What are the advantages of MSS spectrum being used? And in terms of the terminal ecosystem, are they willing to incorporate these bands? And finally, what's the timeline for all this to take place?
Right. Well, the advantage is the spectrum is licensed for this kind of service, for connecting terrestrial things through satellite. And in terms of the being able to support on devices, the frequency, the bands that are best suited for this L band and S band are very close to the cellular bands. And so if you have an antenna that supports GPS on a cell phone, you can access our spectrum. And most cell phones have a dozen or more different waveforms and frequencies they're supporting. So it's very easy for the chip vendors to support additional spectrum. That's sort of the slam dunk part. The harder part, and I think this is sometimes is under recognized, is there really is no regulatory framework to use terrestrial spectrum from space. And there's been experimental licenses granted to try things. But there is no history of this being made possible. So today, someone can't just go and say, "Hey, AT&T, I'm going to use your spectrum from space." Even if AT&T wants to, the FCC would say, "Well, no, we haven't got that license. You can't do that." And so if you look at that, and pretty much every region on Earth has a similar situation where satellite spectrum and terrestrial spectrum are licensed differently and have different rules and different holders. And so, one of the challenges, if you're a geo operator and say you convince one country to license that you can reuse terrestrial spectrum from space, well, you're in a fixed place and you can deliver to that country all the time. If you're in LEO and your satellites are constantly moving, and if you want to monetize those satellites, you have to have that license arrangement everywhere your satellites are touching if you want to provide service. And so it's a very complex task to go to 100 countries and say, I'm going to go convince the regulators to allow this kind of licensing in this model. We may see it sometime in the future, and I think there'll be lots of pressure to change the licensing regimes. But right now, the way they're set up, you can't just do this.
James, would you like to comment? Or but eventually, well, he has 26 operators lined up. It seems difficult hearing what Greg is saying, or at least it's going to take time. What are your thoughts?
We don't see the regulatory side as being an impediment. So we will just work country by country, operator by operator. The operators are the customers of the regulators. They have the relationship, and we have our FCC approval. So the FCC, is being the world's leading regulator, has already regulated our service to operate commercially. So we just match that in each country that we're looking to launch with the operator that we're looking to launch with, and that's already underway. And you will see, many of those MNOs in that list ready to launch by April.
Okay, so it seems like there's room for both strategies in terms of spectrum, either it's the MNO spectrum or the satellite spectrum. But is there enough though? So if we say that there's going to be a huge demand, largest opportunity going forward, for today's service, and maybe in the foreseeable future, it's SMS. But going forward, we're looking at broadband for this to really become sticky. So first, in terms of spectrum, if we go broadband, is there enough to go around? Greg, your viewpoint?
It's hard. So, in theory there is, and it really depends upon spectrum reuse. So if you have, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of satellites, you can get lots of reuse and you can provide broadband to a bunch of different users. If you have smaller numbers of satellites, if you've got tens or hundreds of satellites, it's a lot harder. You can do broadband to, one or two customers in a region. But to say I've got 1,000 people below me and under one satellite and they're all going to get broadband service, that's just not going to happen. Based on physics, based on economics. To do that, it's really driven a lot by what the satellite technology is. So if you have satellites have a lot of power and very, very big antennas, and then you can support more customers at higher bandwidth. If you have smaller satellites with less power, then you can support less users or more users at narrow band or with messaging kinds of services. Voice is particularly hard because some of these messaging services where the satellite passes by, you pass off a message and it goes away. You can't do that for voice. Voice, you have to maintain a constant connection at high power for the duration of the call. And so that you have to engineer an entire network. You can't just build a few satellites. So I think that the economics won't support broadband to lots of users from space anytime in the near future. It's just too expensive to fly satellites that cost that much for the incremental revenue it's going to generate, because it really comes down to that. You're not going to be charging $50 a month per customer for these kinds of services on a data plan. It's going to be a small increment on their existing data plan unless they have no other option. And so maybe those are the folks who might get broadband. But we see today there's broadband satellite access from GEO today, and there's a number of operators that provide that. They've got speeds of small numbers of megs, and they can do that for a small number of customers. There might be the total market for that might be 4 or 5 million worldwide today. And they're paying $100+ a month. Starlink is capturing a good chunk of that now. They're providing an alternative, but there's still, it's the hundreds of thousands of users. So millions, hundreds of millions of users. I think it's a very difficult thing to provide broadband from space to them if they're using it a lot.
but we are going to get to broadband. Is that agreed? So for this, it can't just be SMS over the long term, right? Would the satellite industry, well, one, be able to and should tap into broadband to make this service really sticky? Or if they don't, it's going to be a failed proposition. Greg.
Yeah, I'd say it depends. So the jury is really out on that conclusion. And again, if the economics are there, if people are willing to pay enough and you have enough users, sure. There's nothing technically impossible about doing this. But if you think back even to when Elon Musk made his announcement with T-Mobile back earlier, late last year, and was asked about broadband and watching a video stream or something, and I think his answer was, yeah, maybe one person in a beam could do that. And Starlink has a lot of satellites, and they're building big antennas to go on them, and they're still thinking that you're not going to see broadband for lots of users within one beam of the satellite at one time. And so I just think there's a lot of challenges still here. It'll happen in the long term. Technology keeps evolving. The economics to get better year after year. We follow Moore's law, but we're nowhere near that point today in terms of the technology you can fly, in my opinion.
Okay, but technically speaking, technology will get to LEO satellites and different spectrums. I think Ka, Ku, really putting through a handset. That will happen technologically over time. Well,
and I say it's the jury's out on Ka and Ku as well. And just because if you look at the kinds of terminals that are used for Ka-band satellite connection today, they're big, they're powerful, they have large antennas. They don't have the form factor that's suitable to put in a phone. Could it get there? Maybe. Better software-defined radios, better antennas. But again, we're generations of technology before that's going to be possible, I think.
Okay, James, your thoughts on broadband?
Yeah, so broadband is certainly within our plans. It's within our technical roadmap. There are certainly many points that Greg made that are valid. So in terms of spectrum, I think it's probably important to take a step back and just to say that underpinning this is a hugely profoundly positive impact for humanity in increasing the economic prosperity of people who probably have the least amount of economic prosperity in many cases. That's certainly the market that we are addressing, as well as increasing their safety in remote areas and taking the search out of search and rescue. As well as improving the responses to disasters. So those are all huge factors that weigh in, and I think with that in mind, regulators will see how profoundly positive and necessary it is to allow our services and other services to direct to device to operate, and then eventually I think we'll also see spectrum opened up, particularly for these services as well, in areas where spectrum is constrained. I mean, there are many markets where the spectrum is not an issue, and there's other markets where it is more challenging. And then, in addition to that, further to Greg's point, is that we will see a whole range of spectrum becoming available for direct-to-device services, in the sense of it's not just the lower UHF band, but L band, S band, and C-band becoming part of what can be utilized by the mobile phone. So it is a journey, it is an evolution, and certainly users feel that a level of broadband is very key for them, no matter where they are, no matter how remotely they may live or work, and so MNOs also feel that that's important to them, and eventually there's no doubt that it will happen. There's just many factors to take into account, but that's certainly our mission. I mean, we're very much focused on being able to provide broadband in the coming years to what are effectively hundreds of millions of subscribers out there that are disenfranchised from that perspective.
Okay, Greg, agree with the statement? There's going to be hundreds of millions of subscribers on broadband on satellite direct-to-device?
Yeah, I'm not convinced. It could happen or it couldn't. I mean, I really think, as I said earlier, the whole economics of this business model is brand new now. we have a lot of experience with this business model for even with some consumers, but not broad-based. And so I think we will see it'll take years to understand whether there is enough demand for broadband to fund the constellations of satellites that will deliver it. And I don't think there's no constellation I've seen planned yet that really will deliver broadband to hundreds of millions of users. So we've got a ways to go.
So when we say broadband, first, so given this is satellite industry to handset, when we talk about terrestrial broadband by MNOs, we're looking at data caps in the gigabits, and the price is really low. For satellite broadband direct to device, it can't be the same level, right? So at satellite, I think we're still talking 128 kilobits per second, and we consider that broadband. So for satellite direct to device on the first iteration, what's the speed, what's the throughput, what's the data cap in your view, Greg?
So the highest speed service we have today is 700 kilobits from our network. So that we call that broadband. A normal consumer wouldn't call that broadband. Consumer wants to see megabits per second at least for broadband, and again, to deliver that over satellite network where the satellites are hundreds of kilometers away is much more difficult and expensive than when you put a tower and the tower is only 1 kilometer away from the end user, and you've got lots of towers and lots of reuse of the spectrum that way. So it is. I think the expectations of consumers are going to be for more than hundreds of kilobits. It's going to be for more, many megabits is what they're going to expect, because that's what they get terrestrially, and that's what they get off their cable and off their fiber as well. And so meeting that expectation is going to be hard. And I don't feel that MNOs are going to go and try and sell that kind of capability to their customers, because they know they can't deliver it. They know there's no way to deliver it today. In 10 or 15 years, maybe it's going to be possible. Maybe there, we'll have made enough innovation, had enough iterations of technology in this industry that is possible. And then, will satellite be a replacement for terrestrial? Maybe. I don't think so. I think you're still, the economics of a tower versus the economics of a satellite are still orders of magnitude apart, and that's not going to change anytime soon. So I think you'll still see whatever you get on terrestrial is going to be broader band, than you're going to get from satellite, for many, many years. Okay,
so if I'm hearing you correctly, when satellite direct-to-device goes to broadband, it's probably 700 kilobits per second, and then 10 to 15 years, it could approach the megabits per second level.
Or not all services are equal. So you can have one user's got broadband in an area, and the users around are using narrowband. That's quite possible. So if people are willing to pay more, they can get more, and pay less, you get less. So we may see what we've typically seen in any other sort of communication industry, that people that consume more service pay more for that service. And the economics will drive how bandwidth is allocated to users.
Like a U.S. government contract, for instance. So if it's consumer based, it's lower throughput. If it's U.S. government, you can provide an SLA that has a higher sort of service level and higher throughput as well.
Or if it's a billionaire on their yacht, they'll have a higher service level.
Okay, great. James, do you agree? We will get to broadband, but it's going to take at least a decade. And when we get to broadband, it's nowhere near terrestrial capability.
I think we will see broadband, at least in terms of many megabits within 3 or 4 years. I really do. I mean, and part of that is the change of the satellite industry, the ability to build satellites at a much more attractive cost structure at a much higher speed. Access to space is ever increasing in terms of launches and cost. And so our roadmap is 100 megabits to the phone in both directions, and sure, that's got to be divided by the number of users, and it just depends on which area you're looking at, because you've got a lot of variation between remote areas and the numbers of users, and then the users that are just on the edge of suburban areas of cities that are just outside of coverage. So there'll be a variety of different scenarios, but I really do think that it is quite within reach in the not too distant future. I mean, 2 years ago, nobody was saying that SMS was possible, and we've already shown SMS and cellular broadcast alerts in 19 countries with operators in those countries. So, don't be surprised about how quickly things can change.
Okay. So going back to spectrum, so technologically and market-wise, it is possible. You can provision broadband services to, I guess, a few, so to speak, and then contend the service to the others, the mass market consumer. So to get to the high market value of broadband with the appropriate ARPUs, will there be enough spectrum to support that? Or this is a niche, limited, specialized, US government, millionaire, billionaire with a yacht broadband service, or you can go mass market as well, James?
Well, I think what you'll see, I think what will happen is that once you see broadband services available through direct-to-device, low Earth operators like ourselves, then very quickly governments will come to the party and say, look, we still believe in universal connectivity. It's still it's been a tenement of the telecommunications industry for decades. We see this as available, but hang on, there's not enough spectrum, and they will accommodate. They will make that happen. And you've got lots of different ways to find spectrum and allocate it to what is a benefit to millions of people in each of those countries. So that's really how I see it unfolding. Governments will make it happen. Regulators will make it happen.
Spectrum will come. So we've got spectrum for the space industry. We've got spectrum for the terrestrial, and we're sort of fighting for that. So if we hold your statement to be true, then the space industry will be getting spectrum to support this from the telcos terrestrially. Is that correct? Or do you go with higher bands like V and Q?
Well, it depends on what's in the handsets, right? Because handset proliferation is an 18-month, 24-month, 36-month cycle. Plus the cost of those handsets. Are they at a price level that the average consumer in, say, for example, Philippines, Africa, or Indonesia can afford? And that would weigh heavily on the views of the regulators and governments that are responsible for putting spectrum that's accessible. We're probably the first satellite operator to wholly embrace and support the mobile industry, right? So we don't really view it as a satellite versus mobile situation. We're here to support people and their connectivity.
Okay, Greg, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that the regulatory piece is thornier or more difficult than any of us anticipate. And just having been in telecom for my whole career and having seen all the conflict and the challenges around spectrum, I'll give you an example. So they wanted to free up the FCC wanted to free up the C-band for terrestrial cellular in the US. And that took years and years of negotiation with the satellite operators who had licensed that spectrum, Intelsat and SES. They finally paid billions of dollars to free it up and made it available, and then license it to terrestrial. They didn't say, we'll just use C-band. Terrestrial guys just go use C-band in space. It's property, and they had to go compensate for the loss of property. And in some cases give different spectrum to the satellite operators so that they can free up the C-band to make it available for terrestrial. That's one band, one chunk of spectrum, one country. It took years and a bunch of money to make that happen. Now multiply that across the world, and it gets very, very complex and very, very time consuming to do that. So that's why I'm a skeptic. It'd be interesting, and if all of it could change overnight. I just don't have any history that says that's going to happen, based on the last 30, 40 years.
Okay. So going back to the pitch to the MNOs, right now they're sold, I would suppose, on SMS narrowband service. But we, as an industry, is trying to get to broadband. Is it a different pitch? And going back to your strategy, one uses satellite spectrum, the other uses the MNO spectrum. What's the how do you convince them to maybe give up their spectrum in favor of satellite direct-to-device service? Or, what's the play? What's the balance between if we as the satellite industry play along with MNOs and MNOs playing with us, what's the right balance? And what, again, is the pitch when we talk about the business case, the spectrum, and convincing regulators across the globe to adopt the service? Greg, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think in all cases, it's the customers that are going to drive the MNOs and drive the satellite operators and providers to do whatever they want. And so this is this really interesting point in history where we're showing customers this is possible. Look, you can actually use this. You've got connectivity anytime, anywhere. And they may go, well, I don't care. we don't think so. We think they're going to go, this is great. I love it. And now I want more. And so you can send me messages. Can I send files? Can I send pictures? Yeah. Okay. Now, once you give me that, can I make voice calls? Okay, that's great. Now can I do watch videos? And so I think the customers will pull us in the direction, and this will take a bunch of different steps and stages, and a bunch of, I think, investment in order to provide the capability from space. So this is an iteration that's going to happen, and the customers will tell us what they want, and the MNOs and the satellite operators will build to meet that need.
Okay. I hope you're right. Rooting for that scenario too. James, do you agree with that? It's the consumers that are going to ask, their MNOs that I want more, I want video sharing, et cetera, et cetera. So, do what it takes. If you have to take spectrum away from telcos, give it to the satellite industry. Agree with that?
Yeah, again, I wouldn't frame it as taking it from one to the other, because the end result is the same in terms of as Greg says, the subscribers will drive it. So what how it's going to play out is the subscribers will get an initial fairly basic service, and then they'll expect more. I mean, we see this repeated over and over in many industries, and so the MNOs will then go and try to think about how they can provide more, given that somebody like Link can provide more, but maybe initially there wasn't as much spectrum as necessary for delivering more, and so then then they go back to their regulator and say, is there more spectrum? Can we have more spectrum? And then the regulator will start to try to work out how to open up more spectrum. And in some cases, yes, of course, it will take years and years and years. In other cases, it could happen very quickly. Because you're again back to these tenements of universal access. There's politics at play there. There's the rural voters, and in many countries we see how powerful they can be. The agricultural sector, so they will start to lean in on this, and they will demand more, and there'll be ways found to make more. The 600 megahertz, for example, part of the spectrum that is not available yet in most countries, and of course there's a lot of work to make it available, but I would say that's one direction that some regulators would take, and there's other opportunities too in other bands. So that's how I see it playing out, and it rather than seeing it as one big problem, we see it as just something to chip away at in a market by market basis.
Okay. All right, and I agree. We at NSR has called this market, it's the biggest opportunity. We're going to go mainstream. But we agree with you too that it can't remain SMS messaging. It has to evolve forward and be broadband based. Now, for this to happen, standards will be critical. What do you think of 3GPP Release 17 so far? Is it enough to get us to, if we're crystal balling the three of us, so we have SMS now, that's going to evolve to broadband, but even if it's 700 kilobits or megabits, it will get there. But the standards have to be in place. 3GPP Release 17, is that going to get us there, Greg?
I don't think so. So, and it depends on what we mean by 3GPP Release 17, because there is a segment of 3GPP that's focused on what's called non-terrestrial networks, which is providing 3GPP services from satellite. And so Release 17 of 3GPP NTN really doesn't have enough to deliver a good service. Release 18 if implement starts to get there, release 19 is probably more suitable because it starts to address process payloads and interconnections between satellites, which is what you're going to need for continuous service. And release 19 is, many years out in the future before you've got handsets deployed and before people can build satellite constellations that support that and deploy it. So I think that the standards are a long path. And in the long run, if we go at 10 years, yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of applicability of 3GPP, and we're going to see a lot of technology, maybe not exactly the same as terrestrial, but there'll be enough commonality that investments can be applied to both. And I'm kind of excited about that because we have this great constellation right now. It's almost brand new. And when we start to design the next one, which is many years in the future, we'll be able to take advantage of what 3GPP has learned and what standards have learned in that time and be able to incorporate them in our next generation. But to get a service out right now, 3GPP NTN, non-terrestrial networks, is not sufficient at all. It's good right now for if you have a tower somewhere and you want to backhaul from that tower to your core network. It's well suited for that. It's not well suited for connecting devices, consumer devices for people using to satellite networks with straightforward 5G. So we chose, we before there was a 5G, before there was a 4G or a 3G, we built out our first network and we designed it. And we've in 2017 through 19, we launched the complete replacement of that network, keeping everything in service. And we realized we didn't want to wait for 10 years for this all to get baked. We have the capability right now, and there's demand right now, so we want to fulfill that. So what we're doing today is not standards based, but very easy to incorporate in handsets because we've seen Qualcomm's added to their chip, and it's going to be coming in handsets this year. So it was a pretty simple process to give the capabilities now rather than waiting for standards to play themselves out.
Okay, so if I hear correctly, your offering is release 17 proof because it's not enough. You're already at 19, whatever iteration that comes out to be.
Yeah, in terms of capabilities. We've got a very robust set of capabilities, but it's not based on 3GPP standards. We're well in advance of that, but at the same time, 3GPP hasn't gone through all the proving out of how you work with a satellite. If you think about a tower is 2 miles away and sits still. Satellites are hundreds of miles away and moving at 17,000 miles an hour. It's a very different problem set. And to get that all codified in standards takes a lot of real world practice. And so I do think we're a long way before the standards are going to have that all captured and be very reliable.
Okay. So with that timeline, you mentioned that 19, it's not even 18, release 18. That's going to make that work better for the satellite industry. So if 19 is the release that you are looking for, at least for Iridium, that delays the implementation, or you just forget about the standards and go at it your way to get to broadband?
Yeah, so I think that I mentioned this non-terrestrial network, the NTN part of the standard, which is about understanding how to accommodate the difference between a tower and a satellite and building that into the standard. I think what Link is doing is saying we'll just use the existing 5G without any of those NTN enhancements and figure out how to make that work. And so again, the idea is being proven out, and it's not really known yet what that's going to look like at scale. We've learned that there's a lot of complexity to being able to offer a highly reliable service from satellite for these kinds of devices. And because we've gone through all those learning pains and developed the technology behind it, it was much, much quicker to take that technology and say, well, it's just another capability in this chip that already supports a bunch of different networks, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, 3G, 4G, 5G, whatever. Just add one more thing to that chip, and suddenly you have access to this very robust network that's well proven and designed to support these kinds of services. That was the fastest path. And because you didn't need to build a bunch of new satellites that incorporate 3GPP standards, you didn't have to fly them, didn't have to fund all that. It was a lot faster path to market, for us, and I think for the industry in general.
Okay. James, your thoughts on release 17, 18, 19?
Yeah, so we're entirely 3GPP standards based, but we don't need any new standards to come to the fore to operate our service. So we're working with the existing standard. Our network is designed with the existing standard, and we don't have any needs in terms of new standards coming out or enhancements. Our approach is to access the market in terms of what's already out there into the standards, and to work entirely within that, and to ensure that the world's 7 billion phones can access our network. That's been our approach from the get-go, and so far has served us well.
Okay. It seems like standards are there, if I'm hearing you correctly, James, but it doesn't necessarily boost the offering from your company, at least. You will comply, but in terms of getting the industry from, closing the business case, getting the regulators in place or regulations in place, and then getting from narrowband to broadband. Standards are there, but it doesn't seem to be critical from your perspective. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right, because our satellites are effectively acting as mobile base stations or cell towers in space. And so we have the global patent for that in 55 countries. And we solved the problem for Doppler shift and timing delay in ensuring that it is existing mobile device independent. So obviously a key part of our business model is to be able to access, is to have that sort of distribution access in place in terms of devices. We're turning everyone's phone into a satellite phone without them doing anything. It's been our focus from day one, and so far it's proving out, because as I mentioned, we've already demonstrated this to operators in 19 countries, and we'll be launching in a couple of months.
Okay, so Greg, do you agree? I don't want to put words in James' mouth, but it seems like standards are nice, quote unquote, but it's not going to get us to where we want to be. We will comply, we'll follow it if it helps us, but if it doesn't, we'll short circuit and just go at the market our way to get us from closing the business case, getting the regulators in with us, and moving from narrowband to broadband. Is that a fair statement to say as well?
I think the first part is that standards are not required to do this. Standards are important in that when they're widespread and widely adopted, they drive down costs and they increase availability. And because you've got an ecosystem, people working around the standards, we're not at that point yet from a satellite perspective. And I think we're a long way from being at that point. And once that happens, there may be a whole bunch of economic good reasons to adopt standards. But if you want to satisfy demand now, waiting for standards bodies to incorporate satellites it just takes way too long. And and the same thing happened with cellular, with Wi-Fi, and there was lots of early efforts that were widely deployed, and then standards kind of caught up, and people adopted standards. So I think there's 10 years from now could be different. We could see a lot more use of standards, but right now it's just not possible to deploy a good quality service globally by relying on the standards. So that piece, standards, yes. The rest of it, regulators, the business case, all that, those are still big hurdles. I think those aren't solved problems, and we don't have any evidence they've been solved yet. Once we've got somebody deployed that has 1 million users and has solved the business case and solved the regulatory environment and solved the service availability and capability, then we'll go, yeah, okay, that model's been proven. We haven't seen that proven yet, in my opinion.
Okay. Gentlemen, we have 3 minutes left, and there's a lot of information that's been shared. I certainly gained a lot from this, but it's not clear on my mind as well how everything will play out. If I'm hearing you both, and you're 2 players out of a number that's growing every day, it seems like going back to standards, it doesn't help us today. We may have to go beyond it to get to the service we want to. The business case is really tenuous. We don't know if we can close that. It's a very expensive CapEx, OpEx, elements that have to be dealt with. Regulations aren't there, but everyone, not just the satellite industry, is jumping in because the opportunity is just so big. So it's sort of a Wild West kind of scenario, if you ask me, hearing from you both. So closing statements, please. Having said that, it seems that we are really on open water. We're navigating, trying to reach a point. First of all, please define the point that we're getting to, and how do we get there? And yeah, any other thoughts you might want to share with our audience, please. Let's start with you, James.
Yeah, I mean, there are many elements to this, but I feel, having worked all these elements for many years now, I feel very confident that it's just going to come into being. We're working very hard with the mobile operators that have already signed on to launch our service. We're building satellites as fast as we can and putting them into orbit. Regulators have been, those conversations, interactions have been very, very positive, either directly with ourselves or through the mobile network operator partners of us. We've demonstrated this in 19 countries already. We feel that it's going to happen. It's well on its way, and there are a lot of things perhaps that aren't evident in the public domain yet, but that will change very soon. So watch this space. It's certainly, as you say, one of the most exciting areas for satellite. I've been in the industry for 20 plus years, and I think this is probably the most exciting moment for all of us in that industry.
Great. I'm hearing, reading between the lines, that trust the marketplace. There's so much demand and interest out there. Funding will come, regulations will come, standards will come, and even if they don't, the marketplace needs this, and it will enable it. Greg, final thoughts, please.
Yeah, I agree with what you just said. There are portions of the market where there's tons of demand, the business case is known, the capabilities are known, they're deployed, they're operational, because that's been our market for 30 years. And so we're very familiar with those kinds of users and use cases and technologies. And now, we're opening up to a lot more users so we can put on our network and deliver the same kind of services. The regulatory piece is sorted out for us because we have license to our spectrum. And so I think that there's a lot of unknowns, and they're kind of outside of our domain right now. Inside our domain, there's a lot of knowns, and it's just a matter of executing on that and delivering, good services to our customers and to our partners. So the unknowns will get more known over time, but there's a lot of risk around unknowns. And I think we've sort of got a great position where we've de-risked everything because it's our existing business, existing network. And as those unknowns become more knowns, we can take advantage of that. And we can evolve and add new capabilities over time. So it is really exciting. And every year is going to be different in this industry. And every year we're going to learn a lot more. And 10 years from now, you're not going to recognize it. It's going to be a very different world that we're all, providing these great services in. Great.
All right. Well, we'll talk again in 10 years and look back at this. Final question. Sorry, I'm remiss if I don't ask it. A lot of interest coming in. Lots of players outside the industries are coming in. Apple, these are non-traditional satellite companies, and the telcos are coming in as well. A lot of interest, but a lot of competition coming in. Is everybody going to be around? Jumping to your 10-year statement, the existing players today and those coming in. Our industry is still getting funding despite the macroeconomic environment. But in 5 to 10 years, is all this competition going to lead to just more, or you're going to see, competitors fall out of the way? James, what's your thought on that?
Oh, well, unfortunately, none of us have a crystal ball that we can accurately predict the future. There are many, Link was alone for a long time in this sector, and now the landscape has changed. I think in any industry, if you've got between 3 to 5 players, you've got a vibrant industry. So I would expect the number to be between that, and we'll have to see who that is. There's many things that can happen between now and the next few years in terms of embedding this kind of service into the public psyche and to be widely known and utilized.
So 3 to 5 players in the satellite industry is your prediction?
In the direct-to-device services, that would be. I'm saying that because I think that's what most industries tend to sustain as a good number. And so that would be my expectation. Yes.
Great. Thank you. Greg, agree? 3 to 5?
I think we're going to see numbers like that. Yeah. And we're going to see a bunch of sort of economic cycles before that settles out. Right now, there's a lot of investment into a lot of different ideas that are being tried out, and most of them will fail. Most of the companies, the startups, the different ones have been funded. Most of them will eventually, run out of money because they won't be able to generate enough cash flow to continue getting investment. And with cost of capital going up, we're probably going to see that happen sooner rather than later. The assets from those companies may be turned into something else by somebody else, or they may just go away if there just wasn't, couldn't get enough of the right pieces together. So I think we'll see a couple iterations of these companies before the industry stabilizes and we get to that 3 or 5. And if you look at the history of satellite operators, most satellite companies have been through a bankruptcy. It's not like, hundreds of companies got formed and they were all dramatically successful. Even we in our early days went through a bankruptcy until we could get the business model right. And so we did, and that took a lot of learning, a lot of investment over time. Many companies are just getting started. They haven't even gone through the point where they've tested their business model. And so, I think that's why I talk about 10 years from now, because 10 years from now, we'll have gone through those 2 cycles and we'll have seen what comes out the other end, and the industry will be more stable and more mature. And so I think we're in a great position to go through that because we're a great business, great customers, growing network, record revenue and profit. So I think we're well positioned for that, and we'll see who else is going to be there with us at the end.
Great. And we're looking forward to that too. So we've got Link, Vidium, and we're waiting for the 3 more to come. All right. On that note, James, Greg, thank you so much for joining us on our webinar today. Very interesting. I'm sure we'll have more webinars on the subject. We're just scratching the surface, I believe, and looking for the evolution of this industry and evolution of your companies as well. So thank you, and good luck with your ventures.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed it.
Thanks, Jose. Pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you very much to our audience. Please stand by for other webinars coming from APSCC. Thank you so much again for joining us today.